to rest 'neath bloody moon. Inhale the smoke, kick off your shoes. Rest assured that she's been followed too. You know your worth, now what to do. Shatter all their lovers' plans. No one is safe in shaky hands. Oh, you could have just said so. Pretend you're gone until you go, and the wicked winds will blow. Let them have you like a seizure. Someone will come pick up the pieces, and I shouldn't worry what them other boys will do. Who could have knew that you're the world shaker? You're the minimizing.
Today we're going to talk about how our kids have become more self-reliant and independent since moving to Germany. We are an American family of 6 with 4 kids
And a cat.
who moved to Germany in February of 2021, and we are sharing our experiences and travels and culture adjustments and everything with all of you. And so to start off with, we want to say, before we moved to Germany, our kids were pretty active kids, we thought, you know. They played baseball, we did some gymnastics, dance. They played in the backyard all the time. We had a huge yard. We had a fun little street in our neighborhood. Neighborhood kids would come over. They would stay for hours on end. They would bicycle and walk to each other's houses. You know, our kids were not sedentary by any means. And a lot of kids we knew in the neighborhood and our friends, they were not sedentary kids either. So we thought, oh, we've got pretty in shape, you know, good, strong kids. When
Independent, yeah, right. We were thinking that.
Yeah.
And they're grown so much more since we've been here.
Yeah. And so things really changed and they got even stronger and more independent since we moved to Germany, which we didn't know that was possible, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so before we moved here, we watched quite a few YouTube videos that were talking about the independence that German kids have more in their daily lives. And we thought, gosh, this sounds great for our kids. We're excited for our kids to experience more independence, to be more physically active, for all of us to be more physically active. And so these are definitely going to be based on what part of Germany we live in, which is a mountainous region. We've got a lot of hiking and biking in this area.
Outdoor activities.
Right. And I feel like there's more outdoor activities anywhere in the world that has mountains or has the beach. I feel like those sort of landscapes just really invite people outside, and it seems to be more of a culture in those types of places.
And that's not where we lived in America.
Right. It was not very mountainous and it was not near a beach, so not as much of an outdoor culture where we lived in the U.S., but there may be parts of the U.S. that have quite a strong outdoor culture with people outside on bicycles and hiking and everything. So this is not to say this doesn't exist at all in America or exists everywhere in Germany. So these are gross generalizations based on our personal experience.
So number one is here in Germany, children learn to ride their bicycles at a very early age. I mean, our kids rode bicycles, like we said, they would play out in the street in our neighborhood, but you know, not as young as they are here. I mean, as soon as they can walk, it seems they're getting them balance bikes here, and that idea of having a balance bike that has no pedals, but is a bicycle, that was kind of a new thing for us. We did get one, and it did actually help our son learn how to ride a bike, but that was when he was 6 or 7 or, you know, that age. And around here, you know, people are starting really early. You see kids going to school or whatever with their mom.
As young as 15 or 18 months old.
Yeah, really?
Oh, yeah. I've seen that tiny on the street and a tiny little balance bike just pedaling along, walking along on their balance bike next to their moms or their dads.
And so, like, where we lived, they could ride in our neighborhood. We lived in a pretty big neighborhood, and it was very far back from the roads. And so, yeah, they would ride a little ways to some friend's house and stuff. But here, I guess the distances are a little smaller here in the sense, at least where we live, that the distance that they would go in the neighborhood, you'd be able to be downtown and go to stores and go to shops and go to playgrounds and all these things, where in our old neighborhood, it was just, you know, houses. And so it sort of opens up the fact that things are so a little bit closer together, at least in our town here. and they can go to different places and not, going to school or going to the shop or going to get ice cream or things like that they've not had the opportunity to do before.
Yeah, I mean, the infrastructure of America versus Europe is quite different. Europe was developed long before there were trains or cars, so it was all based on pedestrian traffic and how far you could get. So everything was developed closer together, where the residential centers are right in the middle and mixed in between the commercial centers. So it's all together. And in the U.S., they're most places except urban areas, it's, houses and suburban areas and where people live and commercial. So it's hard to get back and forth between the two places safely as a child.
Right.
So that's largely why our children never went to the grocery store, the bakery, or, coffee shops or friends' houses by themselves. It's way too dangerous for a child to be riding a bicycle on a main road or a highway in the U.S. It's just not possible.
And the distances is both of them. So one of the segments in school that our fourth grader was learning about is all about the bike safety and road signs. And so he was telling, "Oh, Dad, that this sign means this." And he had to take a test, and he got certified to ride his bike around, and it was, he had to bring his helmet to school because they had practice of riding their bikes and trying all this stuff out. And so, they really teach in school these things that, in America, they wouldn't teach that in the same way. Maybe they'd have a little thing about road safety.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I was young, way back when dinosaurs roamed to Earth, we learned, which side of the road you're supposed to walk on, but I don't remember our kids having those sort of lessons in modern day elementary school, in these past years. So. I think they really cut out that sort of thing and really push sort of math and reading and a lot of these other life skills are not really taught so much, I don't think, anymore in America as much as they are here.
Yeah, so we've seen how children learning to ride bikes at an early age here gives them more independence because now they can go further and faster. So they can go to that friend that maybe is in the next town over and go play by themselves. And they can do it safely because they've got a sidewalk or they've got a bike lane. And it's the culture here for cars and bicyclers and pedestrians to share the road together. So cars are used to looking out for people on bicycles, and it's not unusual to be sharing the road. So yeah, we've seen how teaching a child to ride a bike early on here is not only gives the parents more time to themselves and more freedom for the children, but it's also a necessary means of transportation.
And I think there may have been a bit of a shift in America, because when I was little, I did ride my bike down to the park or different things like that. I kind of lived in the country. But I think there's been a bit of a shift of that in America with more in recent times, being, more focused on safety and being, cautious with your children and not giving them that independence. And I really like that here it feels more, like when I was a kid, when it was more just free and open and, you go and you learn how to hike up that big hill by yourself, so it's kind of neat.
Yes, I feel like a lot of things from the past, like my parents grew up, free and wild and could walk and ride their bicycles everywhere and go to the corner store by themselves. Kevin's parents too. We grew up a little bit more that way, but I grew up in the suburbs, so I couldn't leave the neighborhood until I was a teenager. And so I feel like Germany has been able to keep some things of the past that were good, and get rid of the other things like discrimination and inequality and all that. They've kept the good things from the past. And it would be nice to see, America be able to do some of those types of things too. Okay, so number 2 is that children are learning to use a knife and glass cups and matches even as young as 3 years old in kindergarten. And this is definitely not something that's done in the U.S. And I don't think this is a right or wrong thing in either culture. It is just a cultural difference. In one of our previous videos where we went to Hochfällen and we ate at an Alm, you saw Kevin cutting up some schnitzel and Rinderrouladen for our children. And we got a ton of comments by, "Oh my gosh, you ripped that schnitzel apart, that poor schnitzel, that poor Rinderrouladen. Why aren't your kids cutting up their food themselves? Why in the heck are you still cutting their food up for them?" And we were not expecting that reaction. We had no idea. Part of the reason is because we only ordered 3 plates of food and we were splitting it between the 6 of us. We knew that each of our children wouldn't eat a giant plate of food, so we split it all.
And with COVID, it was even hard to get silverware. I think we only had a couple sets of silverware anyway.
Yeah, so Kevin just went around and cut it up to make it easier to eat. So,
but it's a valid point that you say that kids are taught that. It's in like kindergarten. They're taught to use a fork and a knife, and that's really cool. Again, it's that point of teaching some of these practical things in school that we're not used to so much seeing in America.
And there's many American parents who complain about that and say, hey, we would like more practical life skills like financing and budgeting and things like that to be taught in schools, because kids are not always taught these things at home, and the rest of us in society suffer for the ones that didn't learn what they needed to learn. So that's interesting that Germany has kept, I feel like, more of the practical things. And so our daughter Ella, she's 4 and she's in kindergarten here in Germany, and I have been in her classroom when there's been Geburtstag, little parties, little birthday parties, and different holidays and things, and they'll bring out all this food, and every single child in that classroom has a glass cup. They don't give them plastic. They also don't give them plastic forks and knives. They give them metal, and they're child size, right? Child appropriate. And for me, that's like a Montessori approach. When our children were 3 and 5 years old, our first 2, I got so remember how into Montessori I was?
Yeah, sure.
I bought like a ton of Montessori books, and I was like, I'm going to raise our children the Montessori way. I gave them their own drawer in the kitchen where they had their own plates and forks and knives and cups, and they could get their own.
They were plastic, though.
They were all plastic. I didn't make the leap to metal and glass. I didn't. That was my Americanness coming out, I guess. And the kids could get their own food and make their own snacks. I kept some snacks available. This also meant my house was messier, but the kids had a lot of free range. We had free range kids, and we always have. So I guess that's why one of the reasons we like Germany so much, and we fit in well here with the culture, because many of the independent ways they're raising children here, we've already been doing, and we were kind of the weird ones. And our kids would always be the dirty ones at the playground, playing in the mud, playing in the sand, while other mothers are trying to keep their kids as clean as possible and not get their clothes clean, not get their hair clean, and all that, while mine are the one making mud soup. So anyway, so you see kids here as young as 3 also using matches. Every single morning in Ella's class, they light a candle, and one of the kids gets to light it. Each kid gets to take a turn. They get, one day out of the month to light the candle, choose what song they're going to sing, and get to count the kids and all this little stuff. So it's cool. At the early age of 3, they are learning with the teacher's help how to light a match.
So around here, kids go on serious hikes and bike rides, and we've been trying to work our kids up to that. It's just really incredible how outdoorsy the kids are around here. Our neighbors, they go to their Oma and Opa's house that's the next town over, and it's an 11-kilometer ride there, and then they come back.
In the mountains.
Yeah, the mountains. Well, I mean, it's still in the... They say
it's flat.
They say it's flat, but it's not really. It's that super flat. And I mean, their kids are what? 5
6 and 8.
6 and 8. So 6 and 8-year-olds, going on that hike. On that bike ride. Amazing. I've got a colleague who says that she and her 5-year-old daughter get out and just to get some kilometers in and go on 20-kilometer bike ride just for kicks. It's really quite amazing. Quite amazing for us. That sort of thing, that's only what teenagers do or whatever, and young kids are doing it.
Yeah.
And a couple weeks ago we went on this hike. We drove over to near Brandenburg, and there was this hike, and it was like touted as for young kids. And so,
as young as toddlers.
Yeah. So the part we did was the one that was just for toddlers. And if you have the big kids, elementary school kids are supposed to go on the big 6-kilometer, round. And we went on the smaller one, that's just supposed to be for like the little ones. And it was,
this steep.
Well, yeah, it was I think 150 meters of elevation or something like that, which, yeah,
coming from America, I'd never consider that a toddler hike.
Right. You wouldn't, we wouldn't think of that as a toddler hike. And then, like, coming down, it was, like, very steep, and you had to
very
be,
wet.
It was wet, too, when we went, and you have to find the right footholds as you're stepping down, it's not just, walk down a path, And so, that was the toddler version instead of the big kid version, So it's just really neat.
And nobody fell down.
No, nobody fell down. Everybody had a great time, and it was a super fun hike.
Yeah, we got some great exercise.
You hear Peanut back there? I guess
So if it isn't one of the kids that need us, it's the cat.
Right. Come on, Peanut. Oh, there she is. Come on, kitty. Oh, she has her favorite toy, the tomato.
She does. We need to get her on camera with that tomato. You guys would love that. Okay. Here's Griffin. Hi. He's the only one home from school right now.
Yeah.
You feel lucky? Yeah.
So what do you like about being independent and free in Germany?
No idea.
No idea.
Doesn't even know what that means.
Okay, number 4 is that children dress for the weather here, which may sound silly. Why wouldn't children dress for the weather in America? Well, there's air conditioning, and obviously both countries have heating. There's way more air conditioning in America, and a lot of people have enclosed garages, so you go from your, nice warm house to your garage, from the garage directly to the store. Yeah, get in your car. I
missed that part.
Get in your car.
Drive, to the store.
Or to someone's house.
Yeah.
You're barely outside at all. Like even on the coldest days of winter, sometimes I wouldn't even put a coat on because I knew I was going from my house to the car to my parents' house. I would have this far to walk, and I didn't need a coat. Right. So you don't really have to dress for the weather there. You sort of live in this inside bubble. You can, if you want to be outside, you can choose that lifestyle, but on an everyday basis, you don't really have to dress for the weather. You dress for what the weather is inside. So like people will go to offices, and in the summertime, they have the air conditioning on so cold that people wear winter clothes.
Yeah, wear long shirts in the summertime because it's so cold with the air conditioning.
I know you Germans are going to cringe at that because that's a huge waste of environmental resources. Yes, which is a whole other subject. And it's also very uncomfortable. I remember freezing in offices and stuff when I was working.
And so that took us by surprise when we're getting our kids to go to school. And they're like, okay, well, they got to have their house shoe because they're going to be walking out in the mud and stuff with their regular shoes, and they're not going to be clean, so they have to have their house shoe. And then they're going to go out and play outside, no matter what the weather is most of the time. So they got to have their Regenhose, their rain pants, and a jacket, and famously, you can tell them about the kindergarten and the rain boots.
Or snow boots.
They'll ask, make sure you bring your snow boots. And then at the kindergarten, they have all these requirements. You got to tick off the list of all the different clothes that they have to have.
Yes. And I was hounded by the teachers for several weeks because Ella didn't have a baseball hat. And they're like, she needs a kappa. She needs her kappa because she is running around in the sun, and we don't like that the sun is hitting her head. And actually, they were right. She was actually getting a little bit of a brown, like her skin was turning brown, going from red to brown. And she was getting sun on the top of her head. Oh, it's not good for skin cancer later on. Anyway, and so now Ella remembers. We don't have to remember for her anymore, but we remember she always has her cap. And they were upset. Ella loves to wear fancy shoes. She's very girly. And so at first she wanted to wear her cute cowboy boots or her cute Elsa shoes to school. And teachers were like, no, she needs tennis shoes. She can't run around and play with those things on. She can't run around and play, she can't run around in these dress-up shoes. And I was like, oh, that's true. But in America, like in her preschool, they played outside. But the playground was about this big. It had just one playground set on it. The ground was all rubber. They did have some grass. And when I picked them up, they were often in the grass and not on the play set because kids prefer nature. And it was just very controlled, very, what do you want to call it?
Sanitary, sanitized, I don't know.
Yeah, very sanitary environment. Now, elementary schools, I think, are at least the one we went to, was much more natural. And yeah, there was a big playground, but they could also play in the whole field around there. But yeah, it was very sort of cookie cutter. I didn't like the play area at all at her kindergarten, at her preschool. We call it preschool in the U.S. So it was definitely a huge difference. The kids have to dress for the weather here, and the teachers will be on top of you if you don't. And ours got in trouble quite a few times.
Well, it took us all to figure out how to get everything together, and
Yeah.
and then even like all the backpacks. Having a good backpack that buckles and is
Yes,
and
because they're
is
walking.
really because they're walking.
And riding their bikes.
then all the kids have the little rain hood to put over their backpack to keep their backpack from getting wet.
And some of them have a cover for their backpacks that's a neon cover so that cars
can see it.
Cars will see them.
Yep.
And so kids are out in life. Like they're among the adults. They're walking to and from school. They're riding their bikes to and from school. They are out in the city. They're part of life with us. And I love that. And the kids like it too.
And then the fifth one is the playgrounds are so much fun and riskier and just more diverse and varied. And of course, we've got a whole video on that. You can check that out here. And it's just they're just having so much fun out there and all this cool playground equipment.
So next week, we're going to share your comments. I put a post in the YouTube community tab asking you, what does a self-reliant, independent German childhood look like? What does that look like in practice? And it's many of the things we've mentioned today, but in the next video, we're gonna read your actual stories and your accounts of what a German childhood looks like here. And I know you're gonna love that episode, hearing from you. And some of your childhoods just sound so idyllic and like something out of a storybook. It's just great. So that's coming next week, so make sure to stay tuned for that. We hope you enjoyed our video today. See you guys next week. Cheers.
Cheers.